So I met this guy one day. Um, and so I meet a lot of people, and especially people on the street tend to be men. I tend to meet a lot of women too, but usually women tend to stick together. So the times that I've come upon most women, I've either stayed far away from them because they're not women involved in the same lifestyle I am, or they're women that are pretty much only around women or that slowly stick around women. And those groups are harder to get into. I lucked out in Missouri to find a group of wonderful women that all just blessed me just with their energy, just being real with me and just let me be myself. And I had a really transformative experience in that short time. And it was very much women centered. It was very on us being able to, I am smoking a cigarette, for us to be able to uh, just embrace our feminine aspects. And like me and this one girl specifically kind of were coming from a place of having a really misogynistic view internalized throughout our childhood because of our parents and our life and our lives and stuff, and just different things that we had went through, even as kids. And so we found a place there where we both kind of with each other were able to, I feel like, reach this a new level for all of us. Really, I think we're all still kind of going through it. The two girls had kids, so they're in a different position than either I or the other girl were in, and their transformations look different. But because of that too, it was such a blessing to be able to be around those families and around those kids. And like, man, those kids are incredible. Every single one of them, all four of them, were just really, really incredible kids. And to be able to be around their families and stuff was such a blessing. But what I was going to talk about was that generally I meet men on the street. That's what's mostly on the street. Um, and I don't try to meet a lot of people. I just, happen when I happen to talk to people or whatever, stuff like that. And it's always just so random. And it's like, because I don't go seeking these things out, I'm not out here like looking for friends and stuff like that. Like, I'm good. So I just am open to learning what I can where I'm at and being, offering myself however I feel I need to. I've made a point throughout this journey to not use sex or drugs or money of any sort as anything for anything. I don't use drugs, and I've made a point to not use that or use men in order to find any sort of sustainability. Everything that I've happened into, like this apartment, for instance, is off of the graciousness of people who actually care and aren't seeking to take those things. There's people that actually care about bigger things than sex or money or drugs. There's people, that actually are revolutionaries and truly and done things in this world that are huge. And to be able to find these people and interact with these people and stuff has just been incredible. And then I've also just met, I've just met so many different people, but like this one guy in particular I was thinking about. I was sitting at the bus stop and he happened to come up and asked me where I was going. And he's like, "Oh, you actually need to be at the other bus stop." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, when is it?" And that bus did just left, so it wouldn't come for another 40 minutes or a half hour or something like that. So we just sat and talked for a while at the bus stop. And then he just decided to hang out with me for the day, which was totally cool. We were having a good time. But as we were talking to the bus stop, he just started sharing his life with me. And he shared with me that his wife had recently passed away, and that it just wreaked havoc on his life, that it absolutely, destroyed him emotionally, but that had come after his kids. Both of his kids had died in a car accident. Young kids, 2 and 4, had died in a car accident, I believe 4 years ago. And that had taken a toll on his marriage. He had kind of just buckled down on work, become very successful again in work, and then was trying, and his wife had done all of this work in order to maintain their marriage, and they were finally coming back, and their marriage was finally something that was a point of happiness for him again. And his wife died of a brain aneurysm, unexpectedly, obviously. That's generally how they work. And he was, it just broke him. After everything, it broke him as a person. And understandably. And he ended up pretty much, he was like, I worked on Wall Street. I'm a millionaire. And I left it all behind to come onto the street because I couldn't be held back anymore. He was like, I dedicated all my life to my job and it wasn't bringing me happiness in these times that I needed the most. When I didn't have my wife, suddenly I didn't have anything and no amount of money was going to make me feel okay. And I needed to be able to unravel. I needed to see that side of myself. I needed to get to know myself again without her and go through this entire process in order to build myself back up into whatever I'm really supposed to be, which I found incredible, and incredibly relatable. I've been in that position, not that same position, obviously, at all. I've never been a millionaire. I've never had kids. I've never been in that same exact position, but it was relatable for the fact that I've been in my own position of leaving everything in order to build better, in order to hit rock bottom and to build better, because I know that that's the only way that I'm gonna truly know myself, and that I'm gonna be able to really prove myself to myself, and that's really the only thing that truly matters. And so we spent the day, maybe like 4 or 5 hours that we spent going around the city. We just took the bus around the city, and then we went and we're hanging out with some random people and goofing off, and we had a really good time. We were having a great time, and he kept telling me that he believed that I was sent by his wife, because his wife was she was actually Miss Wisconsin some years ago, and me being from Wisconsin, he was like, he was like, you remind me of my wife. Like, talking to you reminds me of like why it was it came out here. He said, I think truly I've kind of lost myself a little bit for a minute here, and I've kind of really let myself go, and I let myself get overtaken by this process. And you're reminding me of what it was that I was doing in the first place. And, maybe I don't need to be doing it this way anymore. And maybe I've learned what I need to learn and I can move forward, which is huge. This is a man in his 50s at this point, late 40s. And, he needed that. And for me, it's like one of those things where like, but what was crazy is like the way that I go about things. I don't choose what other people believe. You know what I mean? And I don't try to like discount what other people believe either. What I believe is that if you believe it, it's a valid reality. It's your reality. If you truly believe it, if you truly believe it, then it is real to you. That doesn't mean that it's the universal reality or that it's what's actually going on, but it's enough to dictate your life. And so I try to respect that. And I don't go around talking to when people say to me that they feel like I was sent by someone to them, or that they feel like the things that I'm saying are specifically for them from somewhere else, like not from me, like I couldn't know these things, like the fact that I'm saying the things that I'm saying have to either be from God or from a passed on loved one and stuff. Like I don't discredit those things. I let people believe those things if that's what they believe, and I agree. For as much as I can, I can't prove anything. I just put myself in a position of being able to be used, and I do believe that that's technically how it works. I can't say. I think everything happens right here and right now, and that there are other dimensions that are happening on top of this reality, but that they're intertwined with our reality, and that a matter of an awareness will. It's just a matter of awareness to know how to recognize those things, and I don't think most people are that keenly aware, and I don't think that they necessarily even need to be. And so when he's telling me that he believes that I'm like giving him messages from his wife and stuff like that, like I believe it's valid. I believe that that's how it's hitting him, and I believe that it should, and I believe that like there is an aspect of the memory that he has of his wife that is continuing to teach him in those ways through me. And what I thought was really crazy about it was that like, so he tells me those things, tells me how he feels like he can change his life and like these different things, and he's just like, really moved by the concept of like people living on the street and what it's really like, and like he's learned that now and he can take it and move on to something better. But then this other dude comes around while we're hanging out. We're sitting with these other two dudes. This other dude comes up and he's a younger guy, and he immediately like is not giving this dude respect because he thinks he's a nerd. He's like, I don't like the way that you're dressed. I don't know what you're doing here, thinking that you're one of us. Like, you don't belong on the streets. So, like, I don't know who you think you are, and I don't know why this girl is with you. But like, he immediately came across as disrespectful, which at the time was to be entertaining, but he was also trying to make a point, and the dude took it one way and started expressing his Wall Street side. He started talking to the kid where he was like, well, on Wall Street, we don't talk to people like that because we know this and we do this and we got all this and this is what it's like. And this is what it's like when you have money and when you have privilege, and I don't have to be like you, sort of deal. And I just was like, you literally, and the kid looked at me like, see what I'm talking about? And I looked at the dude and was like, everything that we've been talking about today and that we've gone through and everything that you've said would lead me to believe that you were having a change of heart about those very things. But yet when it comes up, you can just, you just show that like you don't actually care about the reality of things. You just care about, the prestige, and that like you still separate yourself and think yourself better than everybody else, even though you're in this exact position. And like, I just don't feel like you're really coming from the same place that I'm coming from, and that I really don't think that you and I serve the same master. When it comes to these things, I thought that maybe we did through all the talks that we've had, but it's evident that like there's still stuff you have to work through, and I don't want to continue on any further in this journey with somebody who's proven to not have the same standards that I have. And I wished him well and he wished me well, and we went in our separate ways. And then like within 20 minutes, I was sitting there and talking to this other guy, and as I was talking about like how weird this reality was, because as I was talking to this dude from Wall Street, like he took on these different forms and faces that everybody does where they remind me of these other people, and like I have to like work out the feelings that I have. Like it's obviously like it's a trigger from past relationships or past experiences with people, and I like am actively projecting that onto this person that I don't know, and so I have to find myself in a place to receive what it is that actually is happening in the moment, and to process it through the lens of the past experiences or the past relationship, and then use that to work off of what is real and what isn't. PTSD, the way that it works, and like the reason that I'm so like I just have really severe PTSD. But to the like, I make it work for me in that way, where like I'm aware that like it's something my subconscious has done in order to protect myself. It's a way that like my consciousness even recognizes that it doesn't. My consciousness has been trained to people please, and I'm still working that out. I mean, it's been 30 years. It's been at least 16 or so, 16, 17, 18 now or so of me actively being aware of this and like working out these behaviors. And it's a hard process working out codependency, for sure, especially when you're trained into it, and especially when PTSD is the tool used to kind of exploit it or trigger it, or like get it to keep going, sort of thing. So I've had to recognize in myself that like it isn't a curse, it's a blessing. It's something I can use to my benefit when I'm being triggered. That doesn't mean like it's my PTSD. Like I can recognize when it's that's being triggered, and then I can consider why it's being triggered, and I can learn better from the position than I was able to in the past. So it's kind of like having deja vu, only being like way more keenly aware of it almost, in order to be like, okay, if I'm in control of this, I can see what's going on. I can make my own choices. I don't have to be somewhere where I feel away, but I also like don't have to feel away, you know. And I'm always working those things out. I don't think most people realize how often that's happening, but it happens all the time. And maybe in part it's just because I was so sheltered when I was growing up that like I kind of clung my codependency, like I clung to those relationships that I had, and they became like sort of archetypes in my subconscious to the point where like now I carry all of those I carry every experience with me in that way. Where like everybody that I've ever interacted with or had some sort of like relationship with in any sort of degree has become an archetype in a way. Um, I don't know, but yeah, talking with that guy, and I don't know, it was something that like it was weird because then when I left, and like within 20 minutes I was talking to somebody else, and I happened to notice that right where I was standing and having a cigarette, um, which I had quit smoking 5 years ago, and I didn't smoke up until last year. Actually, this year I started. Um, Maybe it was last year, but I was partying a lot when I first got to Austin. So there's just always people drinking and drugging and stuff. And I generally don't do a lot of that stuff, but like when in Rome. So I found myself starting to, bum cigarettes from people. And that has now turned into me just randomly buying cigarettes when I have them, or being willing to take cigarettes whenever people give them to me or whatever. Um, and I'm kind of on the fence about it. I like it. I really enjoy it. Um, but I also don't think there's anything good about it, and there's plenty bad about it. So, you know, I'm always I mean, those are signs, obviously, of like a sort of stagnancy, and I'm aware of that. Um, I try to be honest, like that's like that. Trying to out. I'm not out here trying to act holier than thou in any way ever. Like my entire everything that I've done, everything that I do is very much like how like you shouldn't be able to even be jealous of this. Like, there's nothing that I'm doing that's beyond what most people are doing. I mean, it's just my awareness of self and the capacity I have to go about it with a different mentality, and like I get that that's what people like struggle with. That's the whole thing, right? And that's like what I've worked so hard for. Um, yeah, that's everything. But at the same time, like, my life is not I live my life very normal, like I don't I don't have a lot of things or do a lot of things or live a lot of ways that like are like I don't do anything that's impossible for anybody else to do. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing, literally nothing about me that's so special that nobody else could have those same qualities. Like I don't know, people are weird, but as I'm standing and having a cigarette and talking to this guy, I happen to notice that the air conditioning units that I'm standing next to are Carrier, but the one that I'm standing directly in front of has the last R scraped off of the sign for some reason, so it just says Carrie, like perfectly clear. And that was the name of the dude's wife. And so it was like directly after I left him and stuff, then I see Carrie, I see the sign from her. Um, And it's one of those things where, like, I don't generally go around being like, yeah, I talk to the people's passed on loved ones. I have agreed that that is what I'm doing when I feel that that is what I'm doing. But at the same time, like, I don't, my theories about things are like, have always tended to be like more scientific. So, like, the way that I look at it is like, not that there's anything truly beyond this, but that because that was something like I never even met my real dad. He died when I was 6 weeks old. But because I experienced that, and because I'm literally, his DNA is inside of me, like, he is always going to be with me. And he's living through me. And there's ways that like I can interact with that, or that someone else could even interact with that through me. And like, yeah, that is my dad through me. But at the same time, it isn't. It's all still me, and it's all still like right here, right now, sort of deal. Um, but then stuff like that happens, and it is very interesting to me because, like, obviously, like, I don't know, it's still a point of manifestation. I could have not even noticed that and wouldn't have received that message, or like I could have seen it and just not I don't know. I don't see how I could not be aware enough of what I had seen. But like, you don't always process everything in those veins when you first experience them. So like, I could have not received it that way. But like, I don't know, stuff like that I find very interesting. This dude is telling me that he feels like I'm helping him get his life back on track by being a messenger from his dead wife from Wisconsin named Carrie. And just the fact, I mean, and this is what's so weird, is because like, this is how people generally have been talking to me, um, always on the street. Like, I mean, this is kind of how my whole adult life has been when I meet strangers. It's really weird. Um, but like, actually, there's been multiple times in my life where I've experienced this randomly too. Um, even as a kid, but it wasn't as recognizable. Where like, this entire journey has been wild, because I've literally like the girl when I was in Missouri, the girl and I were sitting there talking about her grandmother, who we'd been talking about, who like I'd been crying about and stuff, just because like, I don't know, I just felt so close to her, and I felt so close to her grandmother through her stories. And like, we're sitting outside, talking about some real serious stuff that neither of us had shared with anyone else in that way before. And we were having this conversation that like, we'd both kind of been having with ourselves, or dreaming about having with somebody else in a sort of way for a long time. But then as we were sitting there having it, like, it was weird. Because it didn't sit, like, it was just like one of those things where it was like, yeah, but this can't, I don't know. It was hard for me to process. I know it was hard for her to process. As we were sitting there talking, she like brings up her grandmother, or I brought up her grandmother, and this bee comes flying right in between us, directly in between us. Like, I'm looking at her, and all of a sudden this bee comes into my line of view and just sits right in my line of view, staring at me. I mean, I'm looking into this bee's eyes, and it's looking into my eyes, and it's like, and she's sitting right behind me, and she's watching it too, and we're both just staring at it. And it sat there for like 2 solid seconds, like 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. It sat there for almost 4 seconds. It sat there for a straight, like, for a minute, and I was just staring at it, and then it flew away. And I was like, okay. I mean, all the respect. All the respect. I mean, it was straight up, that was the thing. I mean, because it was her grandmother, like, reminding me, like, to be upright about the things that I was talking about and the way that I was talking about things. And it was a struggle because of the reality of what I was talking about. But at the same time, it was like a blessing. Her grandma's just very, I had a grandma like that. It was very like, just stern, you know, just very stern, so loving, so loving. The fact that she's willing to give that energy at all, like, is pure love. But like, she don't have to be nice about it, sort of deal. And like, she's not gonna be nice about serious things. Like, I have a tendency to make light of things. Um, and that was her caution. And I didn't fully know how to take it at the time, to be honest. Like, I didn't feel like I served her the best that I could. I did. I served her the best that I could, but I didn't feel like it was like the best that there was, sort of deal. I don't know. It was a weird one, but like, both of us, like, as soon as the bee flew away, like, both of us, like, looked at each other, and we're just like, we kind of laughed about it, because she knew that it was her grandma as much as I did. And so it was one of those things where, like, I don't know what to make of those things. The same thing. I mean, I had this dude one time. I was like fucking hopped up on my painkillers from my knee surgery. I barely take Tylenol. I've been taking ibuprofen now since yesterday. Started taking ibuprofen for my fucking mouth uh, infection, and you know, that's just so that I could actually function. I was getting to the point again where I couldn't think clearly. Um, but I normally never. I mean, I'll take Midol if my period's like super super bad, and that's about it. I normally don't even take Tylenol or anything like that. So being on painkillers had me hyped up. I mean, I was hallucinating. I was literally so messed up on these drugs. I did not like them. I was prescribed them for a month. I think I took them for like 8 days, 10 days maybe, and was like, okay, I don't want to take any more. Don't give me any more of these. I thought I had OD'd on them. I had an out of body experience on them. I was literally hallucinating. It was wild. I'd never had an experience like that. It was incredibly wild. And when I've told people about it, they're like, oh, that sounds like a DMT trip. That doesn't sound, because I was on oxycontins, something like that, oxy somethings. And I hated them. And they made me feel sick. They made me feel like when I would start to come down from them, I would be really angry. I'd be really irritable. I'd be really like just not a nice person, and it made me want to be on them because I didn't like how I felt off of them, and I did not like that at all. And I was like, I don't want to be on these at all. I don't like this. I'd rather just deal with the pain. Um, so that was a really weird experience, though. And after that experience, I started having these really weird spiritual experiences all the time. Um, it like opened me up to a whole nother level of spirituality. It was so strange. But immediately, like within the next week, all of a sudden I started getting these like downloads. I started getting these these. I've always experienced conviction. I grew up Christian. I grew up very, you know, spiritual in different ways. And like conviction was something I was taught. Conviction was something I felt. Conviction was something I followed. But as an adult, I kind of went through this process of realizing that so much of my Christian conviction was straight up just trained into me, and that it was a subconscious defense tactic, if anything, and like a mechanism. And I worked to kind of clear it and to cleanse it and to stop. I didn't want those, the trained triggers. I wanted things that actually made sense for who I am and within my life. And, I've worked very hard to try to work a lot of that stuff out. Um, and so that's kind of the way that I was looking at all of this still anyways, was like, man, all of this, I just didn't realize that those things were like that deep in me and trained in me that way. But it was like a strange thing, because I remember I got this conviction to, it feels like a download, because it feels like all of a sudden this information is just like all that is just given to you, and all of a sudden you're like made aware. It completely synthesizes with all the rest of the information. So it's like, okay, well, I can't, like, this is the next thing. It's weird. It feels like a program being put in installed. It's so strange, but it's a conviction, I guess, more or less. And I had this conviction to start practicing ancestor worship, just like not something I know that anybody does. Like, I mean, now I've met people, and now I understand that it's like a tradition for a lot of people, and like especially people of different types of cultures. And like coming from a native culture, like there was a time that was something that we practiced, and so that's where it was coming from. But it was weird because it wasn't like anybody was teaching me. My ancestors were teaching me, and it was so strange because within the matter of like 3 days, like I didn't even know what an ancestor was. Like I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, I have native blood, but I am mostly white, and like there's just this concept that like white people don't have ancestors, when like that's where I was. We all have ancestors. We all have the people that came before us. Period. Those are our ancestors. Everybody that came before us, they didn't have to do something great. Um, Most of my ancestors didn't do anything great. um, they did a lot of bad. They did a lot of bad in their time. They did a lot of shit that brought on a lot of bad karma. They didn't protect the planet the way that they were supposed to. They didn't protect people the way that they were supposed to. They didn't protect themselves the way that they were supposed to. Um, they sold out to systems that have enslaved the generations that came after them, and they've, you know, existed through those generations, having to watch the enslavement happen, becoming part of it. Um, and so that was like within the matter of 3 days, all of a sudden I became aware that like, oh, my ancestors aren't just like these entities that existed once and now they exist forever in the, you know, veins of time, like watching over me. I mean, I don't look at it like that, like not like Lion King, as much as I look at it like literally in my actual person, the very DNA that I'm crafted out of, and thus every experience I've ever had because of the way that it's been influenced by that DNA is all directly affected by my ancestors, meaning every single person that's ever come before me and everything that they ever did and everything that they ever influenced and all of the ways that all of those things cultivated into me. And I can take a responsibility for those things. That's what's so wild that I started finding, like, as I started praying to my ancestors, I started like, it was so strange, but I started being able to like look into my actual self and be like, oh yeah, there's this thing about me that I do that I don't like and I don't know why I do it. And it's not something that's reflective of who I want to be. It's just reflective of who I've always been, and I continue to identify myself by it. And I started being able to pinpoint those things. And I actually started being able to have these weird